Hello, good day, everyone. My name is Rowena Diputado, and we are the group 4. And our task is to present about the topic teaching learners with hearing impairment. So, together with my group mates, Ma'am Orsabia and Ma'am Mariela Lopez, we are going to define what is the meaning of hearing impairment as well as other key terms that are associated with it. And also, we will be exploring the different um, causes of hearing impairment, then its types, and what teaching strategies will be useful for learners with this disability and possible or hearing aids or instructional materials that can be used. So, without further ado, let's first examine this particular factual information that we gathered from the World Health Organization or the WHO. And this was dated February 2, 2024. So it says here that by the year 2050, nearly 2.5 billion people are projected to have some degree of hearing loss, and at least 700 million will require hearing rehabilitation. So, this particular prediction is somewhat alarming, and it would lead us to question of why. And maybe there's an answer to this somewhere. At first, let us get to understand what is meant by hearing loss or hearing impairment. So, again, we gathered our sources of information from different online uh, references, from articles, and journals, and other government websites. So, what is meant by hearing impairment? So, hearing impairment, according to the WHO, means a person who is not able to hear as well as someone with normal hearing. So, hearing has been measured, or hearing frequency is measured according to decibel. So, a threshold of 20 decibels or better in both ears is said to be normal hearing. Beyond that is already a hearing impairment. So, according to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or the IDEA, hearing impairment is defined as a permanent or fluctuating and adversely affects a child's educational performance. So, what makes it permanent or what makes it fluctuating? There are different key terms associated with it as well. So, another meaning is that in 2016, by the RPWD Act, it defines hearing impairment on the basis of the intensity of the sound the person is able to hear. So, there are some key terms that are associated with hearing impairment. So, there's the terms we call as the hard of hearing, and then hearing loss, deafness, and auditory impairment. So let us first take note what is meant when you say hearing loss. So hearing loss refers to a decrease in the hearing sensitivity measured in decibels. So this is according to the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders. Deafness, on the other hand, is a profound hearing loss greater than 90 decibels. So, meaning there is no more sound that the person receives. So, it makes verbal communication difficult or impossible. Hard of hearing, on the other hand, is refers to mild or moderate hearing loss, thus requiring assistance to communicate. So, in short, when you say deafness, it's really profound hearing loss. So there's no more sound that the person can hear. But when we say hearing loss, there may be some degree of sound that the person can hear. So, what does it mean if someone is deaf, deafened, or hard of hearing? So, deaf, as I've said earlier, are persons having 70 decibels or more of hearing loss in speech frequencies in both ears. And it may be ranging from, while hard of hearing is 60 or below 70 decibels in terms of frequency in both ears. So deafened, on the other hand, means the person has lost the power of hearing temporarily, or it may be permanently. For example, there is an explosion and then suddenly our ears, we cannot receive any more sound. It's deafened. Then when we say late deafened, it means that the person sometime it will be born with hearing or it's normal, but then later on has lost all of her hearing as an adult. The oral deaf, on the other hand, is born deaf before learning to speak, but then was taught to speak, so does not anymore require the use of ASL or American Sign Language. Okay, so when it for the types of hearing impairment, this will be discussed by my partner, Mrs. Lopez.
Good day, everyone. Today I'm going to continue our report for Group 4, and that is types of hearing impairment. Okay, there are three types of hearing impairment. Okay, we have number one, sensorineural hearing loss. Okay, this type of hearing loss occurs when the inner ear or the actual hearing nerve itself becomes damaged. This loss generally occurs when some of the hair cells within the ochlea are damaged. It can be a result of aging, exposure to loud noise, injury, disease, certain drugs, or an inherited condition. This type of hearing loss excuse me, is typically not medically or surgically treatable. However, many people with this type of loss find that hearing aids can be beneficial. Number two, we have conductive hearing loss. Okay, this type of hearing loss occurs in the outer or middle ear where the sound waves are not able to carry all the way to the inner ear. Sound may be blocked by airwax or a foreign object located in the ear canal. The middle air space may be impacted with fluid, infection, or a bone abnormality, or the eardrum may have been injured. In some people, hear- conductive hearing loss may be reversed through medical or surgical intervention. It's most common in children who have recurrent ear infection or who insert foreign objects into their ear canal. And number three, we have mixed hearing aid loss. Sometimes people can have a combination of both sensorial and conductive hearing loss, and then develop a conductive component in addition. Hearing testing is a critical for discovering exactly what type of hearing loss you have and will help determine the hearing care solution that is right for us. Hearing aids are available in any size, styles, and technology, and many alternatives to hearing aids. Okay, this time, okay, we have degrees of hearing loss. Okay, we have four. Okay, number one, that is mild hearing loss. Mild hearing loss if one-on-one conversation are fine, but you have difficulty understanding some words when there are a lot of background noise. Okay, you may have mild hearing loss. Okay, number two, we have moderate hearing loss. Okay, moderate hearing loss. At this level, you are asking people to repeat themselves a lot during conversations, in person and on the telephone. People with this degree of hearing loss cannot hear sounds lower than 40 to 69 decibels. Both mild and moderate hearing loss can be typically treated effectively with standard hearing aids. Okay, number three, we have the severe hearing loss. If you can't hear people speaking without the use of hearing aid or other amplification, or you tend to rely on reading lips, to understand the conversation, you may have severe hearing loss. People with this degree of hearing loss cannot hear sound lower than 70 to 94 decibels. And the last one is profound hearing loss. Okay, if you have profound hearing loss, you can only hear extremely loud conversation or sound, and even it's difficult to understand without hearing aid or cochlear implant. You may prefer using sign language to communicate. People with this degree of hearing loss cannot hear sound lower than 95 decibels. Prolonged exposure to sounds louder than 85 decibels can damage our hearing capacity. That is uncomfortable. And the threshold of pain for our ear is only 140 decibels. Okay, this is known as the noise induced hearing loss. And how are we going to measure the severity of our hearing loss? Okay, number one would be how loud the volume needs to be before you can hear the sound adequately. And number two, which frequencies are harder for you to hear, just as higher pitch sounds, lower pitch sounds, and the volume is measured in decibels, and frequency is measured in hertz. The degree of hearing loss have primarily refers to how loud you need the sound to before you can hear it. And the next one is okay, the causes of hearing impairment. Okay, the causes of hearing impairment for sensorineural hearing loss. Okay, we have aging, illnesses like coronary artery disease or heart disease, high blood pressure, hypertension, strokes, and or diabetes. Ototoxicity, certain genetic conditions inherited, being hit in the head, noise-induced hearing loss. Long-term exposure to loud noise like working in a very noisy environment like factories and construction sites. And congenital infections like cytomegalovirus or the CMV. Next, we have the conductive hearing loss. Okay, the causes for conductive hearing loss are the following: airwax that build up in your ear, fluid in your middle ear from colds or allergies, middle ear infection, swimmer's ears, okay, eustachian tube issues that traps fluid in your middle ear, ruptured eardrum, ear tumors, and something stuck in your ear. For example, your child faced with a side dish of peas may decide to put one in her ear. And another one is congenital conditions present at birth that affects how baby's middle or outer ear are formed. And the last one is mixed hearing impairment. Causes of hearing impairment. The causes for hearing impairment is the combination of conductive and sensorial hearing loss. That means it affects our outer and middle ear as well as our inner ear. For example, if we have taken medications that affect your inner ear and you have accidentally ruptured your eardrum in your middle ear, now that we have a mixed hearing loss.
Good afternoon once again. So now that we know about the different types and causes of hearing impairment, this time I am going to share to you what are the teaching strategies as well as the communication or teaching strategies and communication methods that we may be able to use for those with hearing impairment. Okay, so the communication strategies have been classified or as depending on which is applicable to the type of impairment that the learner has or hearing impairment that the learner has. So one is the use of sign language. So we know already that the American Sign Language is the one that being used in the field of special education. Then another is the use of finger spelling. This is particularly um, done especially in cued speech. Another is the use of lip reading. Then we have clear speech, in which the words that are spoken are clearly enunciated. Then another is through writing notes, and of course, using gestures and body language. So, with these communication strategies, it is now up to the teacher or those who are handling visually impaired learners to determine which works best for a particular learner. And now we move on to the teaching methods for the hearing impaired. So, what are the approaches or methods that we should be able to utilize for a particular learner with this disability? One is the use of total communication. So, in total communication, it incorporates all means of communication, such as signs, natural gestures, finger spelling, body language, facial expressions, lip reading, and clear speech in order to teach the learners. So, it could also come in different modalities, such as touch cues, in which certain touch are cues for the learner to understand what it means. Example, um, hand on the shoulder could mean that it's time to go. And then also we have objects of reference as part of total communication modality. For example, is the use of a spoon. When a spoon is being um, taken, it means that it is dinner time. Next is the use of environmental cues. So in our environment, we see or we can experience a lot of cues. For example, the, s- the smell of cooking is an environmental cue that something is cooking, and then others is it's the sky is dark. It means it's going to rain. Another is the use of visuals, picture. This is another modality in total communication, aside from the use of body language, facial expression, or nonverbal means. So, as well as in total communication, it could make use of AAC or alternative augmentative communication, in which specialized materials such as low tech materials, books, or symbols, or high tech materials, the use of electronic devices may be used to aid the learning or to teach the learners. So, this is for total communication. Next is the use of the American Sign Language or English bilingual bicultural approach. So, we know already that American Sign Language is the dominantly used uh, language to teach or sign language to teach learners who are hearing impaired. But based on our source, it's not only for those, it's called as bilingual bicultural approach because this could also be used for those who are non-native speakers of English who are learning a new language. The third one is cued speech. So it's a visual mode of communication in which mouth movements of speech combine with cues to make the sound of traditional spoken languages look different. So cued speech makes sounds visible through the use of eight hand shapes and four placements around the face. So it's like that. I watch a video of this, and then it seems different from sign language because there are placements near the mouth, and then there are hand shapes as well. Okay, next is the use of auditory verbal therapy or AVT. So, this is the teaching of young children how to listen and communicate through spoken language assisted by hearing aids and cochlear implants. So, possibly this is for those with hearing loss, not really the deaf, because they can still be assisted with hearing aids. So, the teaching of this is through auditory and verbal therapy, and this has done by specialists. Next, we have visual phonics. So, it's a visual system for teaching sounds or phonics. It uses visual cues once again, or finger spelling alphabet, focusing on discriminating between letter names versus patterns of sounds. And the system was developed by Babs Day in Longwell School, Birmingham. Next, we have the multisensory approach. So it's a way of teaching that engages more than one sense at a time. So it could not just be the sense of hearing, since this is lacking or deficient with the learner, but it could be the sense of sight, visual, or the sense of smell or touch. So that's why it's called as multisensory. And finally, we have individualized instruction, in which it integrates instructional technology to cater to a specific need of a hearing impaired learner. So, with individualized instruction, the learner is guided um, individually on his or her learning. So, there, aside from these strategies, there are also other teaching strategies, such as the following: ensure that there is a clear line of sight, nothing is blocking the sight of the learner, so there is focus to learning. And provide written handouts, visual aids. So, visual materials are critical with the hearing impaired since they rely much on visual or in the sense of sight. Show captioned or interpreted video, reduce background noise, use available resources, and from time to time we should check in with our deaf or hearing impaired students. And for example, if there is uh, an, a time in which there is a distance learning, so we need to adapt our teaching for distance learning strategies. So I have here samples videos for, so this one is for cued speech. So if you have the time, please take note of this or watch this video. We got this from YouTube. And this one is for visual phonics. How is this demonstrated? So please take time to watch. And then this one is the multisensory approach, which has been um, being used in actual SPED classrooms. So I hope that with my discussion regarding the teaching strategies as well as communication strategies, we may be able to, or we as SPED students learn of SPED will be able to use them in our classroom setting soon in the future. Our next topic would be discussed by one of our members, Group 4, Mom or Sabia, and she is going to talk about what are the materials to be used for those with hearing impairment or in the teaching of those with hearing impairment.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Wang. I am Rosland Orsabia, the third member of Group 4. I am tasked to deliver to you the different types of assistive devices for the hearing impaired. So here are the different types of the assistive devices for the hearing impaired. First is we have the assistive listening devices or the ALDs. Next is we have the augmentative and alternative communication devices or the AAC devices. And lastly, we have the alerting devices. But before we delve deeper into the different types of assistive devices for the hearing impaired, let us first learn the history of the hearing aid. So, the history of hearing aids spans centuries. It reflects a significant technological advancement aimed at improving auditory support. So, it is aimed at improving auditory support for those with hearing loss. So here are the different stages of the history of the hearing aid. First, we have the ear trumpet. Next is we have the acoulallion. Next is we have the Vactuphone. Then we have the wearable hearing aids, the transistor, and then lastly, we have the microprocessor and the digital era. So let's try to get to know what are the advancements during the 17th and 19th century. So during these times, the earliest hearing aids were ear trumpets and acoustic horns. It is made from materials like wood, animal horns, and later it became metal. These devices funneled sound into the ear and were particularly common in the 18th and 19th century. Ear trumpets worked by gathering sound waves and directing them toward the ear canal. Although limited in effectiveness, they helped amplify sounds slightly for people with moderate hearing loss. The next stage is the carbon hearing aids. It was invented during the 1898. So it was invented by Miller Rees Hutchinson. He developed the first electric hearing aid called the Acophone, which used a carbon transmitter to amplify sound. However, it was large and it is not convenient for the wearer of the hearing aid because it requires a um, separate separate battery pack. Next stage is the Vactuphone or the vacuum hearing aids. It was developed in the 1920s, in which it allows for the first true electronic hearing aid, which amplified sound more effectively than carbon-based designs. These vacuum tube hearing aids were smaller and provided greater sound amplification, but they were still very large and often carried in a handbag or attached to a clothing. The fourth stage is the transistor hearing aid. It was developed in the 1950s. It transformed the hearing aids. Because transistors were small, they were more energy efficient and more reliable than vacuum tubes. So, behind the ear and on the body hearing aids became popular as they could now fit comfortably on the body or behind the ear. The transistor revolution allowed hearing aids to become more discreet and affordable, making them more accessible to the general public. Next stage is we have the analog hearing aids. It was developed in the 1960s. They used analog technology to process and amplify sound. During this period, in the ear hearing aids emerged, fitting completely in the ear canal for a more discreet appearance. These analog devices offered limited customization with basic adjustments in volume and tone. Next is we have the digital hearing aids. So the 1980s marked the transition from analog to digital hearing aids. Digital signal processing allowed sounds to be converted into binary code, enabling more precise sound amplification and background noise reduction. By the 1990s, fully digital hearing aids had become commercially available, allowing for multiple listening programs and enhanced sound processing capabilities. Digital aids allowed wearers to adjust the settings for different environments and often included directional microphones to better focus on specific sounds. And last but not the least, we have the modern smart hearing aids. So it is developed in the year 2000 up until today. So modern hearing aids are mini computers with advanced features, including Bluetooth connectivity, noise reduction, and adaptive feedback cancellation. We are now done with the history of the hearing aids. So at this juncture, let us now focus more on the different types of assistive devices for the hearing impaired. The first type of assistive devices is what we call the assistive listening devices. So ALDs are technologies designed to help individuals with hearing loss to improve their ability to hear and communicate effectively, especially in challenging listening environments such as large rooms, noisy areas, or spaces with poor acoustics. These devices are often used in places like theaters, classrooms, places of worship, and conference rooms. They can be used alongside hearing aids or cochlear implants to provide a clearer audio signal. So these are the several types of assistive listening devices. First, we have the FM systems. Next is we have the infrared systems. Next, we have the induction loop systems. We have the personal amplifiers. And last but not the least, we have the Bluetooth devices. Okay, so now what is an FM system? How does it work? So FM system uses radio frequencies to transmit sound from a microphone used by the speaker directly to a receiver worn by the user. It is best used for classrooms, lecture halls, and other large spaces. So the first picture shows an example of FM systems. Next is we have the infrared systems. So the second picture below shows an example of an infrared system. So infrared system, how does it work? So infrared systems use light waves to transmit sound. A microphone captures the sound and the signal is transmitted to a receiver through infrared light, which the user wears. So this is best used for situations requiring privacy, like theaters, because the signal can't pass through walls. Next, the third one is the induction loop systems. So the third picture below shows an example of an induction loop system. So this system uses an electromagnetic field to transmit sound. A wire loop installed in a room transmits sound from a microphone to a telecoil receiver in the user's hearing aid or a portable receiver. The fourth type of ALD is what we call the personal amplifiers. So these devices amplify nearby sounds. The user wears a small microphone that amplifies speech and sends the signal to earphones or directly to a hearing aid. It is best used for one-on-one conversations or small group settings. Last but not the least is what we call the Bluetooth devices. So many modern hearing aids and ALDs use Bluetooth technology to wirelessly stream sound from phones, TVs, or other devices directly to the hearing aid. Bluetooth devices are best used for personal use with your phones, computer, or televisions. So the ALD are devices that can greatly improve sound quality for people with hearing difficulties by reducing background noise and enhancing speech clarity. So the second type of assistive devices is what we call the augmentative and alternative communication devices, or the AAC. So AAC devices are tools that help individuals with speech or language impairments communicate. These devices range from simple, non-electronic tools to sophisticated computer-based systems. AAC devices can be used by individuals who have temporary or permanent difficulty speaking due to conditions such as autism, cerebral palsy, stroke, or other disabilities affecting speech. So there are two categories for the AAC devices. First is we have the unaided systems, and the second one is the aided systems. Okay, so let's tackle first the first category of the AAC systems or devices. We have the unaided AAC systems. So these systems rely on the user's body to communicate without the need of external tools. An example for this are gestures, sign language, facial expressions, and body language. For the second category of AAC devices, we have the aided AAC systems. So these systems involve the use of external tools or devices to assist in communication. Aided AAC devices can be further divided into two categories as well. We have the low-tech and the high-tech devices. So an example for this is picture boards, communication books, letter boards, and other devices that often include sophisticated features like speech output, word prediction, and touch screen interfaces. AAC devices can be customized to meet the needs of each individual. It enhances their ability to communicate effectively in daily life. They play a crucial role in improving the quality of life, enabling greater independence, and fostering social interaction. The third type of assistive devices is what we call the alerting devices. So, alerting devices are assistive technologies designed to help individuals, particularly those with hearing impairments, stay aware of important sounds in their environment. These devices alert users to sounds or signals they might otherwise miss, such as doorbells, alarms, or phone calls. Alerting devices typically can be used visually, tactile, or amplified signals to capture attention. The first type of alerting devices is what we call the visual alerting devices. So these devices use flashlights to signal an event or sound. They can be used for fire alarms, doorbells, telephones, or even baby monitors. An example for this is flashing light, fire alarms, flashing doorbell alerts, and then we have the visual phone alerts. Next one is what we call the vibration alerting devices. So these devices use vibrations to notify the user of important sounds or events. Example for this are vibrating bed shakers. So it is often used as part of an alarm clock or fire alarm systems. A bed shaker is placed under the pillow or mattress and vibrates to wake the user. The other example for this as well is the vibrating pagers or wristbands. These wearable devices vibrate to alert the user of a doorbell, phone call, or other events. Next is we have the auditory alerting devices. So these devices amplify sound or change its frequency to help individuals with hearing loss hear specific alerts. So an example for this is amplified smoke alarms. So these alarms produce a much louder sound, sometimes combined with a lower frequency to help individuals with hearing loss detect them. And then next is we have the amplified phone ringers. So these increase the volume of the phone's ringer to ensure that the user hears incoming calls. And the last one is we have the combination alerting devices. So many alerting devices use a combination of visual, auditory, and tactile signals to ensure that the user receives the alert in the most effective ways. So an example for this is multisensory alarm clocks. So these alarm clocks can wake the user with a combination of sound, flashlights, and vibration. We also have home alerting systems. So these systems are network devices that detect various events such as doorbells, smoke alarms, baby crying, etc. It sends notifications via flashing lights, vibrating pagers, or smart devices. And that would be all for the fourth group. I hope you learned something today, and I hope you had fun listening to our topic. So before we end this presentation, I would like to read this quote for everybody. So, kindness is the language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see. Okay, so thank you everyone and have a good day. Bye.